Hello, my name is Mr. Green. I'm a teacher at Make Believe Middle School, and I am a special educator here. I have been for this is my first year, so it's nice to meet you. And I wanted to meet and talk briefly about your scholar and your concerns about them um, within this classroom environment. I remember I overheard some comments about the sensory friendliness of this room, as well as the ABA training that your scholar receives for a certain amount of hours per week. I want to just take a couple minutes of your time and go over that and kind of brief you on why these different things are in effect and how we can perhaps change your mind or persuade you to think differently when it comes to these different topics. So here's the agenda for this afternoon. It's very brief. Like I said, just want to take a couple minutes and talk about sensory friendly rooms, ABA, the misconceptions surrounding these two topics, and then finally we will implement some sort of action plan so that we can help your scholar as best we can, considering that they have autism spectrum disorder or ASD. So we are going to talk first about sensory-friendly environments. Firstly, I want to say thank you for sharing these comments and feeling comfortable enough to say these comments out loud. These are harsh thoughts to think, and I know that your concern for your scholar comes from a place of love and a place of concern. So I am more than happy to have this conversation with you. But that being said, I want to do, excuse me, I do want to jump in and talk about sensory friendly environments. It is new as a practice overall. So we, as educators by the state, by local law, by pretty much every law that exists at every different level, are required to be data driven in our approach to educate. And basically, what this means is we have to review the literature of special education so that we can best implement best practices in order to best serve our students. And while the implementation is easy to say, it is not so easy to do. So we follow the practice of reviewing and then implementing these EBPs or evidence-based practices. There are a couple different tiers of research. I won't get bogged down in the details, but basically there's three different tiers of research practices. One stage is tier one, which basically means that it has been researched and implemented in very few cases and has not had such definitive results. It is so new that we are still considering it. Then there's the next tier, which is emerging, which is a lot of our research-based practices in this regard. Basically means that it has been tried in some single case studies, multiple baseline approach studies, and group studies, but may not have as definitive results, but definitely more than tier one, and has been kind of gaining popularity in the field. And then finally, there's EBPs, which are tried and true methods um, of instruction and have been proven to work in most of the case studies that have been conducted over the past 5 years or so. It has not only been gaining popularity in the field and becoming a regular conversation starter, but has been kind of proven to, it has its spot proven by its effectiveness. Um, so sensory friendly rooms are kind of in between that emerging and evidence-based practices based on my tier list that I had just supplied you with. Um, Basically, for students with autism spectrum disorder, it's important to allow the student to outwardly express their emotions because the term autism actually means to revert inward and to not seek um, many social interactions, which obviously one of the primary purposes of education is socialization. But for our students with ASD, that can be very difficult. Conversations can be very forced or uncomfortable. And so we want to make sure that the environment itself is sensory friendly so that they feel most at home. They're not being distracted by any uncomfortable stimuluses. Because basically, what sensory friendly means is friendly to the senses. It means that it is not harshly stimulating your nervous system, um, your nervous system that uh, processes the responses to stimuli and then causes the brain to tell the different parts of the human body to react in different ways in result of that stimulus. In fact, we're going to talk about this later, but ABA actually follows a similar model to an old school psychologist, B.F. Skinner, in terms of stimulus response stimulus. I'll get into that in a second. But to be fair, it does not mean that your student has a sensory processing disorder or an SPD, like I mentioned in that third bullet point down there. It just means that a student might find some stimulus is uncomfortable. For instance, too bright of lights, too loud of noises, high-pitched noises, the squeaking of basketball shoes on a basketball court. These are some stimuluses that even neurotypical individuals find somewhat annoying and hackneyed, but it is amplified to a level that's unfathomable for our students with ASD and for students that happen to have an SPD. So I wanted to just brief you on those so that it makes more sense when I talk about ABA. But our classroom environment does follow the sort of evidence-based practice of sensory-friendly rooms. We have different stations that our students, all students, can use and engage with to outwardly express how they feel, and then it allows them to come back to the classroom environment with academia in mind, more focused and more productive. We're going to talk briefly about ABA, applied behavioral analysis. Now, you mentioned it kind of being like monkey training, or it seeming kind of primitive, or something of that nature. I appreciate that comment as well. I will brief you on kind of where the literature stands on this. There's an article that I cited at the top of this slide that's one of the nicknames of ABA, Autism's Most Common Therapy. This includes repetition and positive reinforcement with reward and incentive to get students to participate in what we would call desirable behaviors or positive behaviors, such as raising your hand or excuse me, maybe picking up a pencil or limiting the latency between getting their folder out and putting their homework in the folder, right? Simple things, but these really do help with, fine motor development. Some of the benefits are listed under that fifth bullet down below. As I mentioned, the model, the benefit of language development, increase in intellectual functioning, social functioning, daily life skill acquisition, as well as many others, and many other benefits. It has kind of been proven to work for students with ASD to undergo some hours of this training per week in the classroom environment, because it will assist them in not only substituting less desirable behaviors for more desirable behaviors, but it will also improve general human behavior, which is the whole point of ABA. So this goes beyond the classroom environment. This will be apparent perhaps at home. A lot of parents use ABA in the early years of basic cognitive training to allow their kids to experience the world and also learn how certain appliances work, et cetera, et cetera. It goes far beyond the classroom environment. ABA is very helpful for students with ASDs. I hope this makes a lot more sense. There's some misconceptions around this. So ASD can be very difficult to deal with, but there's a lot of misinformation in that regard. Basically, it means that there's a lot of fads and a lot of treatments that come and go in the field of education and special education as to how best to deal with students with ASD. And by deal, I mean support and scaffold. But like I said, ABA is an evidence-based practice for ASD and has been proven time and time again to close those gaps in cognition. Not every evidence-based practice is going to reach the level of evidence-based practice by the time that we are done implementing it. However, it is important that we try out these different methods in order to find what is most effective for our students and find out how we can be most effective as educators. So this opens up the floor for you to ask me any questions about this kind of brief presentation. If you have anything, do reach out. I'll be making advisory calls at the end of the month. And you have my contact information as well. Thank you for listening. I hope this clears some things up.